Perfect. Morgan Ballis, Sheriff of Blaine County. Thanks for sitting down with me.
Of course.
So a little while ago, I sat down with Matt Fredback and had a conversation about how his office kind of influences the lifestyle in Blaine County in the Wood River Valley. And I thought it would be interesting just to get your perspective. I know your guys' offices obviously work very closely together.
Right.
And like I mentioned before we sat down, I think most of the people that live here, I think we appreciate so many things about the lifestyle, the community. But I think it's something that we probably don't think about on a day-to-day basis because we don't have a ton of crime. We don't have a lot of things that bigger areas have to deal with.
Right.
And obviously that comes from and stems from your role, the police departments, and how all those agencies connect with each other. So what is something that people often get wrong about crime and safety in the Sun Valley area?
Yeah. Sun Valley or Blaine County?
Well, I say, when I say Sun Valley, I guess I'm overarching everything.
Okay.
But Blaine County, right?
Yeah. First, really, we're on par with everyone else when it comes to what I'll call your normal crimes, right? Domestic violence, your batteries, your assaults. Those things aren't, I wouldn't say, any really less or more here than any other areas. We're more insulated from like some of your gang violence and those other crimes that are very much related to either gang violence or higher drug activities, such as your serious aggravated assaults, your murders, your attempted homicides, the manslaughters. We're getting a couple every year or every other year, 2 or 3 years, something like that. It just kind of, you're not seeing that as much. But we're also the third highest DUI per capita in the entire state of Idaho. And here in Blaine County.
That shouldn't surprise anybody.
Well, if you think about it, there's a couple reasons for it. First of all, we're a resort town and a resort community specific to a ski and snowboarding culture that is a party culture.
Yeah.
Right.
And many people, when they're here, they're letting their hair down.
They're on vacation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When I go to Mexico, I drink more in Mexico than I would drink here.
Right. Yes.
But also, if you look, especially because now the bars are mainly populated in Ketchum. When you go South County, there's no bars open, past 10, 11 o'clock unless it's a specific event.
True.
And so when you think about what that means for us as police officers, it's a very small area for us to enforce those laws and regulations. So we're able to get DUIs at a higher rate, not entirely because we have more. We definitely have more. It's more disproportionate based off of our normal size of population. But we don't have as much of an area to cover, right?
Well, and there's one way in, there's one way out.
There's one way in, there's one way out.
Yeah.
We do bar walks all the time. You're walking 2 blocks and hitting all the bars in one go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's really what I tell people is there's not a huge difference in some of those other crimes, right? They're pretty standard. DUIs are definitely up there. But we also have stuff people probably don't know or don't want to know. Like drug trafficking happens, right? Cartel activity. There's no doubt there's cartels operating in some way, shape, or form within the valley. Human trafficking, labor trafficking, those are all things. We have sex workers here in Blaine County.
Yeah.
Right? Some of them are being sex trafficked. Some of them are just operating on their own. But all those things are realities that are realities no matter where you go.
Well, I guess that leads to the next question I wanted to ask is, how much of this has 2020 sort of changed not only the real estate market, but I think a lot of different things. And then you had some policies that were different under different administrations.
Yeah.
What does crime look like locally? Has it become more challenging? What is kind of the data showing us that's happening that might be different from just a few years ago?
Yeah. That 2022, 2023 area, we had a huge influx of migrant populations, right? Mainly from the Peru area. And so with that, indicative of any change in your demographic, there are different things that come with that, right? And so it would not surprise me if we took a very hard look at the data and we saw an increase in some of the crimes such as maybe domestic violence. Obviously, something like failure to purchase a driver's license, an FTP. Um, if you're not here legally and there are more people here illegally, we're going to pull over more people and have more things of that nature.
Sure.
And so there's no doubt in my mind that you can probably see some correlations there. That is not that is not casting a wide net on an entire population or demographic,
sure,
right? But what we know is people that are here illegally get exploited overwhelmingly by their own demographic and population, right?
Okay.
Meaning you are easier for me to victimize because I know you're less likely to go to law enforcement for fear of you being deported or action being taken against you. And so there's no doubt in my mind that we have a lot of crime, especially with those certain populations groups, that's actually very much underreported. Just because of that. And then when you have a new administration like the Trump administration that came in with even harder stance on immigration, that pushes victims even further underground. Right? And you'll see even organized crime organizations leveraging that to continue to victimize people.
So that would surprise people that there is. I mean, I've been here 17 years, and I guess it shouldn't shock me, but obviously there's a drug culture, right?
Yeah.
That's I think every town's going to deal with that.
Right.
The trafficking thing is certainly an interesting thing that you wouldn't think about, but does make perfect sense with that transient group that would come in and out. Yeah.
And human trafficking can take on like a lot of different form, right? There is like more of an exploitation, and then there's the actual act of trafficking, which is a more organized element or group. But it's if you just look with just normal eyes at some of the populations that we have here and how much it costs to live in Blaine County, there's no reasonable reason why someone would choose this as their end destination. Right.
If you're coming in with what I would assume is like that entry level wage work, if that's what you're
right,
it would be very difficult to make this work.
Yeah. I mean, if I have a family in a South American country and I'm like, look, I'm going to make this risk. Okay? I'm going to either myself come here and send money back or bring my family with me. I know all the risks involved. Where is the best place for me to one, minimize being caught, right?
Yeah.
Idaho does not seem like the place you'd want to go.
No, Idaho's probably got some of the hardest, rules around that.
And then where can I essentially maximize my income to achieve whatever I want to achieve for my family? Choosing Blaine County, Idaho, for me, wouldn't be on the top of my list.
Sure. Right? Interestingly enough, though, Idaho, like on a separate like economic thing, is one of the fastest growing states.
Right. Yeah.
And wages are up across the board. It seems to be one of the. So I guess maybe from an outsider's perspective, Blaine County would be a certain challenge.
Right.
But it's probably no surprise that Idaho in and of itself is perhaps one of the more ideal locations just from an opportunity standpoint.
Right.
It might be worth that risk.
Right. Yeah. And so that's why I think it's very easy to come here and get awed by the mountains and the wealth and all the things that are going on and easily turn a blind eye to some of those nuances that just don't kind of make sense.
Yeah.
Right. And those things are happening here.
Yeah.
They're happening everywhere.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something I think that we're less likely to be keen on.
Yeah.
Just because.
Well, the Advocates is a great nonprofit, and it is one of those things when you sit down and talk to them, you don't think of domestic abuse in the Valley, right? Because it's not something that's typically in your face.
Right.
But you know as well as I do, you drive by the Advocates, they're building a new shelter.
Right.
And it's not small,
yeah.
And that's for that kind of interim housing for someone who's in kind of in a dangerous place.
For sure.
And you go, gosh, you wouldn't think it's that prevalent here, but
my
certainly
wife
is.
And I were just talking about that the other day.
Yeah.
And so, it's something that's real. It's something that happens, whether it's more than it was a couple years ago. That's some data we can look into.
Okay.
But I'm also, I'm cautious with numbers because numbers can tell whatever story you want.
Sure.
Right. A decrease in domestic violence could be that we're actually doing the right things. We're helping victims. We're getting upstream. on awareness and giving them to these resources, or it might be it's just underreported
There you
because
go.
of the climate change.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And so that's why we have to be cautious. DUIs, for example, we saw a decrease in DUIs since I've taken office as sheriff.
Mm-hmm.
Very huge on proactive prevention base. We're doing bar walks. We're not walking in and standing in the corner of the bar. My deputies are out there shooting pool with people like,
Yeah.
hey, don't drink and drive. Like, we're out here. Here's the bus. Here's this resource.
Yeah.
Waving down taxis for people.
I think we have 3 Ubers now.
Yeah, we're starting to get some Ubers up here.
Yeah.
And DUIs have gone down. Well, it'd be very easy for me to be like, hey, my thing did that.
Yeah,
thing,
right.
Right. But there's so many other factors that could play into it. Without a doubt in my mind, it has had a positive impact.
I think probably being proactive on that front is obviously going to have some positive effect.
Right.
Yeah.
And so again, like data, we should use data-driven policing, but we have to be careful not to insert our own bias or interpretation into the data that we're using to justify, what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, let's transition. The Explorers program.
Yeah.
I was completely unaware of this program. I've got a daughter who's going to be a sophomore.
Okay.
As Matt kind of explained it to me, it's a way for law enforcement to, like you said, kind of get upstream and get in front of some of these kids that might be making potentially poor decisions, but maybe exposing them to a different side of law enforcement, maybe call it the softer side of law enforcement,
right?
Kind of humanizing that aspect. What does the Explorers program from your position look like?
Yeah, so Explorers program came about, I'm actually going to credit Officer Eric Owens. He's with the Haley Police Department.
Okay.
When I was the school resource officer, he would constantly be like, man, we got to do some sort of program. We got to do some sort of program. And so when I became sheriff, I was like, man, I have the power to do some sort of program.
Yeah, well, because you were there for quite some time with the high school.
I was about 3 years.
Yeah.
And so, the challenge of any program is like, how do you start it up? How do you sustain it? How do you fund it? What is insurance? How do you get this into the school district to be able to roll this out? Well, here it's easy because we have an organization called Far and Wise. It has a whole career exploration side.
Okay.
Right. And so all the difficulties of startup and the logistics was so easy. And so I went to Far and Wise and I said, look, I got this crazy idea. I want to start an academy. It'll be very low impact, 1 day a month, after school, hour and a half, just as our startup, just to see what the interest is. It's a career exploration for law enforcement. So that kind of checks the Far and Wise box. But really what the power of the organization is kind of like what you said. It's about mentorship, right? It's about teaching leadership and community. This last year, our theme was the Fourth Amendment, so search and seizures.
Yes, that's what Matt touched on.
And so it was very much about what are your constitutional rights? Like, how does the Constitution limit me as an officer and protect you as a citizen? And then what are the considerations as an officer applying that in the field? And when you sit down and you look at all the decision points that a law enforcement officer has to make just on the Fourth Amendment alone, it is absolutely mind-blowing. Like, these kids are out there like, man, like, how do you guys think about all these different things at the same time? And so that's a big part of it. And so, but we also did want to expose the kids to we're humans at the end of the day too.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. You go home to your family and.
Right.
Yeah.
And part of in working with Far and Wise, I said, look, we'll start this program, but through the probation courts, juvenile probation, there's a program called diversion.
Okay.
And so if a juvenile gets arrested for a low-level offense, first-time arrest, they have an option to go through diversion. Very similar to probation, not as strict, but some of the same kind of commonalities. You might get drug tested, check-ins, you might have to go to counseling, anger management, depending on what's going on.
Sure.
But upon successful completion, it never hits your record. It's like you avoid the courts to begin with. And so when I went to Far and Wise, I said, look, we're going to do this, but we are going to reserve slots where juvenile probation can assign a kid to this program as part of the conditions of their diversion.
Okay.
And because those are the kids we need to reach, right? And I was that kid in high school. People ask me like, "Hey, what sport did you play in high school?" And I'm honest to God, I'll tell them my sport was running from the cops.
Yeah.
Like I was arrested for a felony burglary at 16 years old.
Yeah.
Just being a knucklehead, just randomly broke into a car, got caught. The difference was I had a probation officer that actually cared for me.
Yeah.
My only goal in life at that time was to become a United States Marine.
Mm-hmm.
And he supported me and mentored me through that and helped me achieve that goal.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I have such a heart for those kids.
It'd just be as easy to throw you away and say, hey, you're
right. For sure.
Yeah.
There's some kids that, first of all, any kid that I have dealt with, especially extensively in the system, I will tell you right now, without fail, they have a life and family situation that is stacked against them.
Sure.
Right. They are responsible for their own actions, but when you take in the totality of what's going on with the majority of those kids, they've lived more life than some adults have lived.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so at a bare minimum, what I can do is treat them with respect and kindness, and empathy, and as a human being.
Yeah.
Like my thing as the school resource officer was like, we're friends all day long. We can high five, we can hug, and I'll be Morgan until I need to be Officer Ballis.
Yeah.
And then once I'm done being Officer Ballis, I'm right back to being Morgan.
Yeah.
Like that thing is done, it's settled, and we can move on.
Yeah.
And so this program through the Explorers is about career exploration. It's about recruiting locally to keep our kids here in the Valley to come back and serve their communities. It's about mentoring and leadership, but it's also about helping kids that might be going down some of those tracks that I was going down.
Yeah.
Help avoid that.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. Do you think that's a unique thing is that something a larger city could pull off? Do you think?
I think there are a lot of similar programs.
Okay.
Boise specifically, I don't know if it's Boise PD or Meridian. It's one of the two. It might be both of them. They have some very huge Explorer academies.
Okay.
More traditional, if you think like JROTC.
Okay.
So we might go that route. We're not there yet. And so I think what's more unique is to have a smaller size population like us,
mm-hmm.
get all 5 law enforcement agencies involved, get the prosecutor's office involved, get St. Luke's to help out,
mm-hmm.
Get search and rescue, get juvenile probation, get far and wise.
Yeah.
Like that's the beauty of what can happen in a small community.
That cross-pollination of all these different agencies.
Because it would not be possible for us as the sheriff's office to do it alone.
Sure.
Like we need those other agencies to help and support, but also we want to celebrate and build up those other agencies.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Matt said something interesting to me when I talked to him, and he was like, "You'll prosecute somebody, and you might potentially see them at the grocery store later that day."
Yeah.
And it's I think that's something that you sort of had just touched on, is you have this real close connection with all these things, but you, like you said, you could see a kid here and you're Morgan, but you're still wearing that badge and have to carry out that duty. But it's that thin line of like, I wear this hat here, but I'm also a member in the community, and I might see at Atkinson's. Well,
for me, empathy, I think it's a bad rap because empathy is looked at as kind of being weak or making excuses for people. For me, empathy is, I can take the time to understand your position and how you got there, right? Your life experiences are different than mine. But in terms of as being law enforcement, it is, I'm going to do my job. You're going to make your own decisions. You should take responsibility, right? If I'm forced to do my job because you made a decision that breaks the law, that's just what it is. There's nothing personal about that.
Right.
But as soon as we're done, it's now my responsibility to almost kind of erase that to some sense. Not in the sense of sacrificing safety, right? If there's someone we're dealing with that we know is going to be someone that's going to be a danger. But in the sense that but a
16-year-old kid, 18-year-old kid who makes
we went through that thing, it's done.
That doesn't define who you are moving forward.
For sure.
Potentially, right? All right, let's talk about people who want to move here. Maybe they're here, maybe they're thinking about putting down roots. How does your office, and I think we've hit on it some, but how does your office influence that quality of life that I think most of us would put very high on the if you had to categorize things, why do you live here? It's not only the mountains, it's the access to all the things,
Yeah.
but it is that quality of life. It is the fact that I leave my car unlocked. It's, you have this understanding of, I don't feel like I have to be on guard all the time.
Right.
So how do you tie into that?
I think in Idaho, it's a little unique because when we think about Idaho, we really think about small government, local control, independence, self-reliance. Those themes often conflict with just law enforcement in general, right? Because law enforcement is here as the government to enforce and tell you things, right? And so there can be a little kind of conflict there. And especially in some areas, especially you get further north Idaho, you might see that kind of conflict a little bit more. Right?
Sure. Yeah, different culture up there.
Different culture. I think one of the biggest things is, and this is one of our values here, is stewardship, right? And what stewardship for us means is, one, we as an office and a government agency, we are good stewards with our resources. We're not going to be wasteful. We're going to maximize what we have. There's that part of stewardship. But then there's being stewards of our resources here in Blaine County.
Yeah.
And the sheriff's office is unique because we have the search and rescue, right? We have ATV patrol. We have the boat patrol. Those different things that we do as the sheriff's office are about maintaining what we have, right? About being those good stewards, about maintaining that quality of life. And so this is where maybe some of the code or land enforcement comes in. People don't like it, right? They hate it, but in some of those instances, it is very much about, we have to maintain the quality of this place that we live.
Yeah.
Right. And so, those are some of our roles in that. Obviously, we also do a lot being in the county with our animal control officer, right? Moving cattle and sheep as they're maybe crossing the highway, things of that nature.
Things
that's very unique
to
some more rural areas, especially here in Idaho.
Sure.
And so those are some things that we're doing to preserve that quality of life, but also being respectful of our diverse population, right? When it comes to immigration enforcement, for example, we don't believe that it's our job to do the federal government's job. Those people that are here and that may be here illegally, they're not default all criminals in the sense that they're committing crimes against people or property here. And so we treat everybody equally. More importantly, we are here to support victims, regardless of who those victims are or how those victims got here. And so that's, I think, another kind of part of what does it mean to be part of Blaine County, and who are the populations that are here and those individuals that are here, and our responsibility as law enforcement at the end of the day to just support everybody exactly where they're at.
All right. Now, from a real estate standpoint, most of the people that move in and about the valley are from within the valley.
Okay.
But we have two major feeder markets, Seattle area, San Francisco area. I think that's historically been our two biggest markets for people to play in or come from. What's something that they just, might not understand coming from a large metro into, again, our little rural area here?
Yeah. I would say two things. First is, and I really haven't seen this a lot, although it can play out, is taking whatever perceptions they have of law enforcement from where they're from and trying to apply it here locally, right? We see this a lot with the kind of immigration and ICE talks. We've had, I don't know how many protests here, against ICE.
Yeah,
right?
I've seen those, yeah.
However, in not a single instance has what they're protesting happened here locally, right? These kind of mass deportation raids, the times that ICE has come up here, they always communicate with us. And every single time they are targeted going after specific individuals with a criminal record.
Okay. Going back to what you had talked about before with the trafficking or...
these people I don't think are necessarily related to trafficking, but essentially they're here. They've come here illegally. They've been arrested for some crime. They've got on ICE's radar. Now ICE is coming to pick them up.
Okay.
But my point is that we have these protests in these areas, and I'm not telling people not to protest by any means, but none of those things have happened here locally, right? What they're protesting has actually never happened here specifically. And so I think what can happen with some people is they come from these other areas where it might be happening, it might be prevalent, or they have perceptions of law enforcement and how they operate there. And they apply that here where it just doesn't fit.
Okay.
The biggest thing I would say to people is something very unique about mountain resort communities is an extremely high suicide rate.
Yeah.
We have one of the highest suicide rates in the state, if not the highest.
Yeah.
And then nationally, very comparable to other.
I think for what our per capita is, it's.
Yeah.
I don't know what the actual statistic is, but I know it's very high.
Yeah, we're up there for sure. And it's a hard phenomenon to try to explain. There's a lot of different theories. Some of it's related to the party culture, especially related to drugs or alcohol. There's talks about like how much sunlight are you getting, and the winters like you're kind of isolated, and it's like these real high highs and then these kind of lows. But a lot of people come here for their mental health, and then for some reason there's like this kind of switch or this turnaround where you're actually negatively impacted your mental health in some way, shape, or form. And so I would encourage people to just be conscious of that. When they're hearing about these things that are going on here and they hear about the initiatives related to mental health and behavioral health, to ask questions, to learn about the why, so that way they can be more aware if they're seeing it in themselves or their family members.
Sure. Really pay attention, because we do have great resources here to address that. Yeah.
And so that would be something very unique and specific to our area that people would just not even think of. Like,
sure.
They're coming here to get away from.
Well, you think you're coming to this great place, which it is, but that would be something to, and I don't know if they could ever uncover what that is, but it is interesting to think, because you don't think of this place as having that type of problem,
right?
But we certainly do,
for sure.
Yeah, and it hits the younger kids. I've got a brother who's 10 years younger, and he graduated here. A lot of he's dealt with probably more loss in his life than really anyone I know. Is just over the past, whatever it might be, 10, 15 years since he's graduated high school. There's been several, probably more than 5 that have taken their lives, which is really hard to think about. So, well, not to end it on like a sour note, but I, again, so appreciate the time. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that we should have touched on?
No, I think we had some good stuff. I'd love to do follow up on a few things. We are rolling out, speaking of the mental health, this past year, we created a clinician-led co-response team. So what this is there is a licensed clinician employed by Family Health Services, but under operational control of the Sheriff's Office. That happened through a grant from the St. Luke's Foundation. And then the Sheriff's Office has a specially trained behavioral health deputy. Here in about 2 weeks, those two are going to come together and be our clinician-led co-response team.
Okay.
And what that means is that we now have a dedicated and specially trained team to go to those mental health calls.
Okay.
They're available to every agency in the Valley, so they can either be directly dispatched as the main unit, or they can be attached or requested as a secondary unit to a call. But more importantly, what they're going to do is a proactive follow-up. The gap we have right now is that if one of my deputies responds to a mental health call, sometimes there's nothing we can do, right? There's no crime. They haven't met the threshold for any sort of intervention. Maybe we create a safety plan.
Sure.
We can maybe get someone to voluntarily go to the hospital. Sometimes we can actually take them into custody and take them to the hospital, depending on the situation. Or other times,
I would assume that they're like, but that's a threat if they're a threat to somebody.
They'd have to be a threat to themselves or someone else.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Or there's a crime and we take them to jail.
Yeah.
Right. In either one of those situations, there is no follow-up to get people plugged into the resources they have. So
Yeah.
one of the main roles of this co-response team is not just to respond, is actually that upstream prevention.
Okay.
And so they will proactively reach out to either those subjects or their family members to do follow-up within a certain amount of time to get them plugged into the resources that they need.
Okay.
And what we have seen in other mountain resort communities where these teams have been implemented is up to a 70% reduction in ER visits, in jail intakes, in calls for service for fire, EMS, police, because this team has that much of an impact and that much of a potential. So we're super excited about that. I'd love to reconnect.
Would love that.
This team gets on board to talk about what that impact.
So that has not rolled out yet.
They come together officially July 20th.
Okay.
They will officially come together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's terrific. I mean, that's obviously a gap in the system.
Yeah.
And one that we are all aware is very real. And so being able to hopefully, like you said, data's good, right, to a point, but you guys should be able to figure out some things with that and hopefully get in front of some people to get them back on the right track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Perfect. Well, Morgan,
Awesome.
Again, thank you so much for the time.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for doing what you do and keeping this community the way it is.
Of course. Thank you.